Welcome to Front Office Pros, brought to you by the Front Office Pros, Steve and Joe. The NFL season is less than 2 months away, and we've been going through divisional breakdowns as we prepare for the season. Today's division is the AFC South, and with us to break it all down is Justin Taylor, otherwise known as JT. JT is a ranker at DLF and a contributor at Dynasty Pros. And since JT was on the show with us, he has a new podcast called The Stew with JT Brew. JT, thanks for coming back on the show.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys. Looking forward to talking a little AFC South.
Hike!
So last season, guys, the AFC South standings was as follows. The Jacksonville Jaguars went 9-8, and that was enough to win the division in the AFC South. Then you got the Tennessee Titans. They were 7-10, missed the playoffs. Your Indianapolis Colts, JT, went 4-12-1, missed the playoffs, obviously. And the Houston Texans were 3-13-1 and missed the playoffs. So based on what has happened this offseason, what is your guys' prediction on who will be the AFC South Division champion?
For me, it's the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think it's going to be a close division once again. I don't see anyone pulling away in this division, but I think the Jags, I had them originally at 11-6. I think it's going to come down to a big matchup with the Steelers in week 7 and whether they go 11-6 or 10-7. But they're the team I've got going. I've got the Colts. I know a little bit of a homer pick, but I've got the Colts right behind them. I think the Colts can go 10-7 against a very weak schedule. I think they lose on the tiebreaker. I think if it ends up both being 10-7, I think the Colts lose on the tiebreaker by strength of schedule. So I've got the Jaguars winning the AFC South.
Yeah, for me, I've actually got the Tennessee Titans winning this division. I know against the contrary, most people have the Jacksonville Jaguars, but hey, man, they were second in the division last year with Tannehill being hurt. If he can stay healthy and play, I trust Mike Vrabel and this team. Always overperforms. I think he's a really good coach. They kept most of their veteran core, won last year here, and given the health, I think they get it done this year.
Yeah, so for me, it's the Jacksonville Jaguars all day long. I think they've got the best quarterback in the division. They've got the best team in the division. I think they just started getting in their groove with Doug Peterson as the head coach. I think they did a really good job, and even coming off that playoff victory against the Chargers. So I think the Jaguars are going to be the AFC South Division champions. But gentlemen, do you guys have any wildcard teams coming out of the AFC South?
I think the Colts can tie for wild card. I don't think they make it. I think they can go 10-7, but I've got this AFC as a really tight cluster this year. I think there's going to be a lot of 10-7, 11-6 teams throughout the AFC. So when I did my AFC breakdown earlier in the year on the Stew with JT Brew, I actually had the Colts missing out on the playoffs in a tiebreaker, as I have quite a few teams going 10-7. So I think they're in the mix at the end of the season. I do not think they make it. I think only one team from the AFC South, the division champ, gets in.
Yeah, I don't have any wildcard teams from this division either. I think the other 3 divisions are stronger, and those teams have a better chance to make it than the other teams in this division here.
Yeah, I'm with you, Joe. I think this is the weakest division in the AFC. You could argue it's maybe one of the weakest divisions in all of football. I'd say maybe the NFC South might be the weakest, but AFC South is definitely towards the bottom. But I don't have any teams making the wild card out of the AFC South. So for the teams that missed the playoffs, where do they finish in the standings for you? So we've got Jaguars 1. JT, sounds like you said Colts just missed it with 2. So who do you got at 3 and 4, and why do you have it that way?
Yeah, so like I said, I got those records. I think the Jags go 11-6, but again, I think that comes down to a big matchup with the Steelers on whether they're 11-6, 10-7. I think the Colts are in the same boat. I think they're probably in that 10-7 range. And then right behind them, I was a little more down on the Texans probably a month or two ago, but as I've seen them kind of build, seen kind of what they do, I as a Colts fan, I really wanted CJ Stroud. I actually think he was the best QB in the draft. I think he's going to be out to prove some stuff. there. I actually like what he can do. I like what they're doing on the defensive side of the ball. I don't think they're going to have a good record, but I think they're going to be in a lot more games. I think they're going to be a lot more competitive this year than they were last year. And again, I have to explain this to people all the time. I think the AFC South has some better records because they're playing the NFC South. I think the fact that both of those divisions are very bad, I think it does open up some space for some of these. So for a sneaky team like the Colts or one of the teams from the NFC South to end up having a better record, not that they're the better team, but they end up having a better record than some other teams because of the ease of the schedule. So I actually originally went through it. I had the Texans at 4-13. I think they go 5-12. There's a couple toss-up games. They have a decent amount of home games that are toss-up games against the NFC South that I actually think that they get advantage by being at home. And they get most of their difficult games that they probably would have lost home or away on the road. So I think that helps them out a little bit. So I think they can win 5. That's probably, if you had to put me down, where are they winning? I'm saying they're winning 5. There's a scenario, if things go right for them, I could see them winning as many as 7 games. I don't think it's much more than that, but I could see them being in that mix for 7. Behind that, I actually have the Titans. I'm not a believer in the Titans. I know they've been good. For years, they just seem to win those close games and they're the team I always want to see in the playoffs because I'm like, oh, they're not going to be as good in the playoffs. I have them at 4-13 this year. Even though they have an easy schedule like the other teams, they are on the other side of that. They have a lot of bad matchups. They end up getting the teams that they could or should beat, they get on the road. A lot of the teams that they probably are going to struggle with, they get at home, which is not a good sign for them. So I have them 4-13. If everything goes right for the Titans, maybe they surprise again. But, I mean, they're going to need 2,000 yards out of Derrick Henry and just ride him all year, I think, if they're going to end up improving on that record. And they're going to need to win a lot of 14-10 games, 13-7 games where they're pounding the rock if they're going to have a better record than that.
Yeah, fair enough. So I Titans as my division winner. Then I got the Jaguars very close second. They're a young, talented roster. I guess that's just, I'll see them one more year, just the growth there, just the youth that they have. That's why I trust the, veteran team and Vrabel and the Titans a little bit more there. Then I've got the Texans third. I think just because I really like CJ Stroud, I think he's the more NFL ready quarterback over Anthony Richardson right now. And I like the Texans defense. They were tough last year with the improved offense and CJ Stroud, which is an obvious upgrade at quarterback. I like them third in division. And then fourth, sorry, JT, I got the Colts there. Anthony Richardson, I really like. I think he was, possibly the best quarterback in the draft. Could just have some growing pains out of the gate until he, kind of develops into that more NFL ready quarterback.
Yeah, for me, it's actually really interesting because all of us are sort of a different jumble here. But number 1, I've got obviously the Jaguars winning the division. Number 2, I've got the Houston Texans, actually.
Interesting.
I think the Texans, when I looked at their roster from top to bottom, I actually thought it was more well-rounded than the Colts and the Titans. I think CJ Stroud, like you said, Joe, I think although I don't necessarily like him from a fantasy purposes, I think he could be a good NFL quarterback. I think he could provide some stability there. He's got a lot of receiving options there. You got Nico Collins. You've got John Mechie. You've got Tank Dell, who they drafted. You've got Robert Woods. You've got Dalton Schultz. You've got Damian Pierce. You've got in the running back position. You've got Devin Singletary to spill them out. And they've got a decent offensive line. I mean, Laremy Tunsil is one of the best left tackles in the whole NFL. So they've got decent building blocks. And on the defensive side, even there, they've got some really foundational players in Will Anderson and Jalen Petrie, Derek Stingley, on one side. So I don't know. I just, looking at that team, I actually thought they had some really good pieces. And D'Amico Ryans, I think, is going to really help that defense to be even tougher. So, yeah, I think that Texas team is going to surprise people. I think they're going to take a big jump. Then the third one, I got the Colts. So for me, when it comes with the Colts, I think my thing is, and JT, I want to get your opinion on this. it's when does Anthony Richardson start? Does he start week 1? Does he start week 4? Does he start after the bye? Because I don't think this team's going to go very far with Gardner Minshew. However, when Anthony Richardson comes in, that could be a different story. But I just, like you said, Joe, he could need some growing pains. I mean, the big thing about him was his accuracy isn't as good. Even Josh Allen, for as good as he is now, his first 2 years in the league were kind of rocky. People were kind of writing him off, pretty quick, and all of a sudden he took this massive jump. So I think there's some decent pieces on the offense for Richardson to work around, but that's my thing with him. And then Titans are last. I can't believe that you have Titans first.
Keep down Vrabel, man. Keep down
them. Titans might be the worst team in the league. I mean, they are one of the worst. They're going to be. I could definitely see them being in the top 3, top 5 in the NFL draft next year. That offensive line is a sieve. Ryan Tannehill is all banged and bruised, and even with Derrick Henry, they're going to be able to stack the box. Who does Ryan Tannehill have to throw to? He's got Treylon Burks and Chig Okonkwo. Who does he have to throw to after that? He has nobody.
Just wait for D-Hop, Steve.
No.
Did you see those odds?
No, I saw the odds. I'm not buying it. Are you one of those people who thought Will Levis was going to go number 1 and you saw the odds? I don't care what the odds say.
I not that one, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, D-Hop's visited the Titans and the Patriots to this point.
Get out of here. So going over to the defensive side of the Titans, that cornerback room, they might have the worst corners in football. I mean, they are going to get torched. And they really don't have that many building blocks on the defense. I mean, they have Jeffrey Simmons, but Harold Landry's coming back from an ACL injury, so who knows how good he is. They've got Arden Kay, who's kind of an interesting player, but not a great he could be better, but no way that you're scared of. And then their middle linebacker core is pretty bare too. I mean, and Kevin Byard's getting older, so to me, it's like they've got nobody. So to me, I don't know. I can't understand why you think that they're going to be first in the division. I think they're going to be brutally bad.
They were 7-10 last year with Tannehill being out for missed a lot of games. And I mean, Malik Willis wasn't setting the world on fire. The Malik Willis team went into Arrowhead and almost took down the Chiefs. Mike Vrabel constantly gets the roster to overachieve and be competitive. I don't know. It's just tough for me to doubt him.
Yeah, I think when you talk about Vrabel, I think Vrabel is one of the better coaches. But I think the issue for me is he's been doing it for a number of years now. He's been helping this team overperform. And at some point, the talent level is going to get so diminished that even his good coaching isn't going to save them. And I think his good coaching has what really have saved them the last couple of years. Because if you've gone down this line of this offense, defense, everything he's done, he's kept them in the games with good coaching. But man, the talent level is starting to really fall off for the Titans. And that's where I'm worried about it. I think Vrabel probably is probably the best coach in this division. Now, I just see the talent level. Everybody else has gotten younger and more exciting, and the Titans have just gotten older and older and older, and that's all they've done. And again, I think the defense has saved them. The defense has been a rock. I'm really worried about this defense. I really am. Just like you said, outside of Simmons, they're really rough. Kevin Byrd's a stud. He's getting older. Their cornerback group is terrible. And they got a lot of linebackers where people are like, oh, they could be good. They could be, I guess. I mean, they could get a lot of tackles. I don't know if that means they're going to be good. And and Landry's their second best defensive player coming off the ACL. So, and I like Landry a lot, and he's a steal right now in IDP leagues because everybody's forgetting about him. But they struggle. But here's what I will say about this division. I think this division is one of the most wide open divisions. I really do. As I said, I think the Colts go 10-7. It would not surprise me in one bit if they go 4-13. I wouldn't even be shocked because that's how I think razor thin it is in this division. I could easily see them winning a bunch of these games, but they were a team last year that won 4 games, and they were a couple plays away from winning 7 or 8, and they weren't even that good. I mean, they were starting. Matt Ryan was turning the ball over everywhere. I mean, they're starting Sam Ehlinger and they weren't even moving the ball at all. I mean, they gave up 35 or whatever it was straight points to the Vikings in a game they should have easily won. So, and they had every injury, all their best players, Quentin Nelson, Jonathan Taylor, Shaq Leonard, every one of their best players were hurt last year. So if those guys come back healthy, I see a resurgent Colts team. Now, the other thing is, all it takes is a couple of those guys getting hurt, Anthony Richardson not making the jump he needs to right away, and then the Colts, their cornerbacks, young, talented, but man, they've got nobody at corner that has any experience, and they could end up just getting fried on the outside. Their secondary is a huge question mark, even though I love everyone in the front seven. So, there's a world where I see them winning 10, 11 games, but it would not shock me at all if they win 3, 4 games. Same, like I said with the Texans, I think they can win 5. I have some scenarios where I think they go 8 and 9. Like, I actually think this Texans team, if I'm a Texans fan, I'm pumped because I actually feel like for the first time in 4 or 5 years, ever since the Deshaun Watson debacle and the DeAndre Hopkins debacle, they're finally like, "Ooh, we got an exciting team. We're young. We got some young talent." And they're a team I think are going to lose a majority of their games, but I think they're going to be in games, and I think they're going to be exciting. And I think that people are going to get to the end of the year and be like, "Oh, Texans are finally headed in the right direction."
Yeah, one quick point of what we were saying about the Titans. I think a part of the reason why they've done so poorly is because of the former GM Robinson and his drafting. I mean, he missed immensely, throughout these different classes. He drafted that offensive lineman out of Georgia. He didn't even play. He was a first-round pick, and he got cut, I think, that training camp. You got Caleb Farley, who, they were, really big believers, and he hasn't been able to stay healthy. So that's why I kind of feel like there's a little bit of a changing of the guard coming on because they brought Rand Carthan in as a GM. So I think they're almost kind of building them, kind of expecting that we're not going to do that well, and that this could be kind of a year to kind of regroup and next year, really go for it.
Yeah, I just think if the Titans get off to a rough start, it's going to be interesting to see what they do at the end of the season. Are you going to see the Will Levis experiment? I mean, I've been vocal and that I'm an anti-Levis guy. I do not see it at all. I don't know what these GMs are seeing. I just am not a Levis guy. All I wanted in the draft was the Colts not to take Levis. That's all I cared about. I was like, I'll take anyone but Levis. You see at the end of the season, and again, if they do that and it does go about as swimmingly as the Malik Willis situation last year, there's a lot of late games in the season that are division games. And now does that mean the Texans and the Colts sneak out a couple more division wins because the Titans are kind of bombing? I think that's a possibility. And I like the Jags. I think people are a little high on the Jags just because of what happened last year with the playoffs and everything. I think people are up. I think don't get me wrong, I like them. I think they're a rising team. I think they're good. I think they're going to continue to get better, but I don't think they're that clear-cut echelon above just yet. Even though I'm a huge T-Law guy, I think Trevor Lawrence is a guy that's going to make a big jump here pretty quickly. And if you don't have him yet, you're probably never going to get him. But I do like them. I just don't think they're the clear-cut. And until their defense, until all these guys that have the name recognition actually start producing like the draft picks they were, I think that's where you got to see the Jaguars make a difference. They need that defense, all those top picks, to actually step up and start playing like first-round picks.
So transitioning over to our next segment, because we are a fantasy football channel, we're going to go through each team in the AFC South, and each of you are going to give a sleeper for each team for this upcoming season. So let's start with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Who's your guys' sleeper for them?
Yeah, I don't know if you really count this as a sleeper, Steve, but my player is going to be Christian Kirk. And I feel like he's kind of getting overlooked right now because everyone wants the new shiny toy and Calvin Ridley and all the buzz is on him. But I mean, essentially, Calvin Ridley is a upgrade to Marvin Jones, who wasn't, had some decent target share in the offense. But I think that just because Calvin Ridley's there, there's definitely enough space in this Jaguars offense to support, Christian Kirk still getting abundance of targets like he did last year, and Calvin Ridley still getting his targets as well. So I feel like he's kind of getting passed over and overlooked, even though he had a great season last year, and everyone's kind of putting Ridley ahead of him, and I'm not so sure that you should.
I actually like that call. He was a guy on my radar too. I just think, like you said, he's getting picked way too late in drafts. As people are just considering Calvin Ridley's the new number one, and he's just dropped. It doesn't make any sense to me. I'm grabbing Christian Kirk everywhere I can. I think that's a great call. I'm going a little bit of a deeper sleeper here, and this is a guy who's being completely forgotten, and that's Zay Jones. So I was on Zay Jones big time last year, just looking at their roster, not having a clear-cut number two, a team that was going to improve. I was like, hey, if he's not going to be your wide receiver 1 or 2, but man, if you're looking at a guy that can get you points in your flex spots, Zay Jones is your guy. He is completely being forgot about because of the Calvin Ridley thing. People just assume he's not even on the team anymore if you go and look at drafts. I mean, he's at the very end of drafts. He's a guy I still like. If either of those guys get hurt, or I actually think they're going to throw the ball more, I think they finally have got their system down. I think Trevor Lawrence feels good about it. I think you don't want to just completely give up on Zay Jones. So if you're looking for a deeper sleeper, that's who I'm going to go with. Zay Jones, almost free in a lot of leagues right now. You can get him really, really late as your 4th, 5th, 6th wide receiver. So he's a guy that I want to take a flyer on because, again, if anything happens to any of those other guys, if an Evan Ingram injury happens, they're going to go a lot more Zay Jones out there, and he's going to take those Evan Ingram targets. So he's a guy I definitely want to take on my roster and stash, especially if it's a deeper league. If you're in a 14, 16 team league where you're going to have a deeper, flex spot position, Zay Jones is the guy I'm going to feel confident enough to throw in one of those spots each week. And I know he's somewhere going to give me something, and he's going to have a big game here or there. So Zay Jones is my guy.
Yeah, so my sleeper is running back Tank Bigsby. I think that Tank being as high drafted as he was, being a 3rd-round pick, I think they're going to have him fill that James Robinson role. And as we saw last year, when it was James Robinson and Travis Etienne, I think there were many who were surprised that James Robinson was actually the big beneficiary early on in the season until all of a sudden things just fell off the wagon wheel and they went ahead and they traded him away. And then he's been forgotten ever since after he got traded to the Jets. But to me, I'm very nervous about Etienne. I don't think Etienne can stay healthy. I think Etienne is going to be used kind of as a I could see him. I don't want to say he's not going to be used as a change of pace, but I just mean that they're going to use him very strategically for his explosion and for his elusiveness. They're going to want him to be fresh, and then I could see them basically just giving Tank, a decent amount of carries, and then kind of then having Etienne fresh, going out a lot for passes and what have you. So, and if Etienne goes down, I really like Bigsby. I think Bigsby is probably one of the best handcuffs that you could have this season, for redraft leagues. So that's my keeper for the Jaguars. So who is your guys' sleeper for the Tennessee Titans?
Yeah, I'm actually gonna go with a rookie running back here as well, Steve. And I'm gonna go with Tajay Spears, who's going to be a good change of pace back for the Titans here. I also think he could potentially get more work than you think with Derrick Henry. I think the Titans could want to try to keep Derrick Henry healthier this year. Maybe try to have him touch the ball a little less so they'd have him for the full season. And, I understand people are, a little concerned with Tajay Spears and the knee thing that he had, in college. He doesn't have an ACL. But I think that's more of a concern, down the road if you're in the dynasty. But for this season, I think Tajay Spears could definitely help your fantasy team.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with you 100% on Tajay Spears. He's the guy I think is the guy to have, because if something happens to Derrick Henry, he's definitely going to be the guy that's going to be the big beneficiary. I'm out on Tajee in a bunch of dynasty leagues because I just don't know how long he's going to stick around with those knees and the injuries. But I think he's a guy you could definitely pile for and get some good production out of for the next couple of years, at least, especially in redraft leagues. I love him in a redraft league. The biggest issue for sleepers on the Titans is I just don't see a lot of offensive power from anyone there. So everybody's pretty much on Treylon Burks because there's no one else at this point. I think Chig is the next guy you could kind of call a sleeper. It's hard to call him a sleeper anymore as so many people are on him. But as far as fantasy production, I think he's more of a sleeper because they're going to have to give somebody the ball, and he just feels like the clear-cut number 2 option for Tennessee. But he would be the other guy I'd be kind of keep an eye out for. But Spears, for all the reasons you said, he's the guy that I'm taking as a sleeper. I think you can get a decent ADP on him. And again, if something happens to Derrick Henry, he's going to get a load of production. He's going to have a lot of chances to produce. And I think they use him even with Henry. I just think this team does not want to put the ball in the air a bunch of times. I think they're going to use both those guys.
So for me, this is going to be probably one of my deepest sleepers that we've had since going through the divisions. But my sleeper is Kyle Phillips. He kind of came on the scene last year, really gets out of his cuts. Reminds you a little bit of Hunter Renfrow, kind of in that slot type role. But he got injured and then really never came back the rest of the season. And like you were saying, JT, they really only have Treylon Burks as a receiver. And then they've got Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, but I'm not really that confident that he's going to take the next step. So I could see Kyle Phillips possibly filling in that role. Now, if DeAndre Hopkins comes in, which you were mentioning, Joe, that is definitely a possibility. That definitely changes things. But if it stays the way it is currently, then I really like Kyle Phillips as kind of a last pick in your draft. Just put him on there and stash him. And see what happens because I think he could surprise people.
Yeah, I don't mind that as a call out.
Mm-hmm. I think somebody else is going to have to step up there. So that's the question. Who do you want to take a shot at? I think he's just as good as any to take a shot at. Somebody's going to have to catch passes. They can't just – it's not old school NFL. They can't just not throw the ball ever. So and they're not going to be able to go to the Treylon and Chig every play. So I think that's probably not a bad call at all.
So what are your guys' sleepers for the Indianapolis Colts?
Yeah, for the Colts, I like Josh Downs. They got a third round. He fell to the third round. It's just kind of surprising for a guy who was, super productive at North Carolina with back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. There's not really that much competition in the wide receiver room, for the Colts. They got Pittman. Alec Pierce made some plays last year. Don't know how much, they can necessarily rely on him. So Downs can get the rapport with Anthony Richardson. I like him as a sleeper this year.
Yeah, for me, I like Downs a lot. I love the selection in the third round. The value was phenomenal. But the guy I'm taking as a deeper sleeper just for straight ADP purposes is Alec Pierce. And the reason I like Alec Pierce is he is a deep ball guy. He goes down the field, gets the ball. And what does AR do better than anything? Throw the ball deep. That's one of his better things that he does. Now, I don't think that Alec Pierce gets a million catches because I don't think that you're going to use him that way a lot. I think Josh Downs is possibly going to get more receptions on the season. But if you're looking to take a guy a little bit later in the draft, I think the latest ADP I looked up on DLF was 66th wide receiver for Alec Pierce, which is, that's low. That's crazy low. I just think that's the one thing. If you went back to the tape at Florida, Anthony Richardson throwing the deep ball was when he looked his best. When he struggled was the intermediate 5 to 10 yard routes. And that's where I think they're going to use Downs more. I think they're going to concentrate on trying to, improve that for Richardson. But I see a lot of play action from the Colts where Richardson unleashes and they try to get big chunks at once. And that Pierce proved he could do that last year. The issue was Matt Ryan, his arm was toast. He could not get the ball down the field. Every time he tried to go deep, he underthrew guys. It was just a mess. It was a mess. And so I think that you're going to see a big uptick from Alec Pierce. He was a guy I liked coming out last year, huge upside. But I think, the new guy in Downs, everybody's is kind of, they're like, I'm kind of out on Alec Pierce. So that's why I like Alec Pierce. I just think he fits into this system with Anthony Richardson a lot. So he's my deep guy. I love him in best ball leagues. Love him in that type of format because I think he's going to get you some big games where he has like 3 catches, 102 yards, and a touchdown.
So for my sleeper for the Colts, and I this guy is one of my favorites. I really like him, and I think he could be on the verge of a breakout. But that's tight end Jelani Woods. He is a big body target. I think the days of Mo Alley Cox are over. I think maybe he's going to pass the baton to Jelani Woods. But there, I could, what do we always say, Joe? A rookie's quarterback's best friend is a tight end. And I think he's a huge red zone target. His athleticism is off the charts. I have to think that when Shane Steichen is looking at his offense and looking at who are my possible difference makers, who are the guys that are going to make plays, he seems like the guy to me that is going to make plays. He started getting involved a little bit in the offense last year, not too much, but we know it does take a while for tight ends to develop. So I think I might be a year too early on him, but I think this year he could make that jump. So I really like him as a sleeper.
I'll jump in here real quick. I just wrote a Risers, Fallers, Long Shots article for DLF coming out this week, and Jelani Woods was my long shot pick for the Colts. And I'll tell you why. I love that pick. Guy played quarterback in high school, went to Oklahoma State, was kind of a big-bodied wide receiver. They never figured out how to use him right. Transferred Virginia, had a big year his final year at Virginia before the Colts took him. He was working his way in. He is Mo Alley Cox with hands and more athleticism. That's why I like him. Mo Alley Cox is just a big body guy. I like Mo, but man, he just doesn't do much for you. He doesn't get down the field. He's really slow. I think he takes over for Mo this year, and I actually think the Colts run a lot of 12 this year. I think they're going to get Woods on the field. I think they're going to get Mo on the field, but I also think they're going to move Mo off and move Kylan Granson in and have him play a little big slot with Jelani in there. I love the pick of Jelani Woods. I just think you can get him so late right now as a second tight end in drafts. And if he hits, he could be big. And what they always say, young QB's best friend is a tight end. And he's big, 6'7", 270. I mean, the guy's a monster. I mean, he should be playing power forward in the NBA. I mean, the guy's an absolute beast. So I just think they're going to use him in the red zone all the time. I think they're going to look. You saw him last year. He got very few opportunities, but he was productive when he actually got chances. I really love that call. I think Jelani Woods is a prime sleeper candidate on a team that loves to use the tight end. And I think he's a little bit of an older guy. So usually we wait till that year 3 breakout, but I could definitely see this year being a really nice year for Jelani Woods.
All right, guys. So going to the last team in the division. What are your guys' sleeper for the Houston Texans?
Yeah, for the Texans, I'm going to go with Tank Dell. He's a guy that the quarterback C.J. Stroud asked the Texans to draft, and they obliged and got him on the team. I know they have, Nico Collins on the roster. Robert Woods is there as well. Some other guys I know they drafted Xavier Hutchinson as well, but I just think and John Mechie, we just don't know how he's going to quite do after he missed a whole year last year. So, Tank Dell might not be a name everyone knows, and if he gets on the right track with CJ Stroud, he could be good.
Yeah, for me, I'm staying in the wide receiver room. I'm taking Xavier Hutchinson. Guy just produced at Iowa State, put up good numbers with not great quarterback play every year he was there. Guy doesn't do anything spectacular. He's just solid. 6'2", 200 pounds, just knows how to play wide receiver. And I just think this Texans wide receiver room is wide open. And if I'm at the end of drafts, I am snagging 1 or 2 of these guys and planting them on my taxi squad or at the end of my bench because somebody's going to end up being the top dog for these Texans. And it's wide open. I love Tank Dell. I think Hutchinson's going to be in the mix. Obviously, you got Nico as the guy that's been there already. Robert Woods is kind of the old vet coming in, trying to teach these young guys. You got Mechie coming back, a great pick last year, but then obviously missed the whole season with the medical issues. It's wide open right now in that wide receiver room. So I'm taking a shot on at least one or two of these guys because, again, it's not going to cost much to get them. And if they don't hit, it's not going to bury you. It's not like you're going like, oh, well, I totally screwed myself there by taking that guy. He's a guy at the end, Either you're getting him before or you're picking him up off the waiver wires or you're drafting him late in your startup or you're drafting him late in your redraft league. But, again, if you take the chance and one of these guys hits – man, you got something for nothing. And that's why I like this whole wide receiver room. I could have picked almost every one of these guys as my sleeper because I think they all are on that sleeper train. But I'm leaning Xavier Hutchinson just because I like the way the guy plays. I just think he finds his way onto the field in a young wide receiver group because he is a little bit older of a player. I just think he has a little more experience being a rookie, even though he's a rookie. I like him a lot.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, JT, because I think I want to say of any team in the NFL, this receiver room is probably the most crowded, and I don't know which one is gonna be the lead dog. I really don't. Like you said, it's a scramble of who it could be. So I'm sticking in the wide receiver room as well, but I'm going with Nico Collins. I might be just biased because I saw this beautiful clip of CJ Stroud throwing it over the shoulder to Nico Collins. I'm like, maybe this is what the future is going to look like. But he's a big body target. He's been there, involved in the offense for quite some time. I think that he'll end up being the starter, and that's why I think he'll maintain the role. Whereas I think guys like Hutchinson and Dell, I don't know if they'll get that shot right away. I think it could be in between Nico, Mechie, and Robert Woods, I think, to start it off. But I honestly, you can't go wrong. And like you said, none of these guys are going that high. So you could take them, any one of them late, and just roll the dice. All right, guys. So before we close out here, we're going to go with a bust. What is one bust in the division? Now, you don't have to, it could just be a quick rapid fire. You don't have to give a huge explanation. But who is your one bust for the division?
Yeah, I'm going to go with, you're going to like this one, Steve. I'm going to go with Travis Etienne. I just think the way his ADP right now, the way it's at, it's just too high. I really just think he's more of a, boomer bust player. I'm concerned with Tank Bigsby, eating away the red zone opportunities and possibly getting more touchdowns than him. So he's really just going to have to rely on the big plays. He's not the volume guy. So he's my bust.
Oh, this one's a toughie. The guy that I don't know if he's going to be complete bust, but I'm not sold on his production again this year is Evan Ingram from Jags. Great year last year, finally stayed healthy. It just kind of worked out that he kept getting a lot of targets and had a couple of huge volume games. It's not that I don't like him. It's not that I don't think he'll be decent. I think where he's getting drafted in a lot of leagues, especially 1.5, 2.0 tight end premium leagues, he's going pretty high. And you could trade him for quite a lot right now. I just traded him a league I had him in. And again, not because I don't like him. With Calvin Ridley there and everybody else there and all the things going on, their running backs catch the ball pretty well. I just see a dip in production for him for where he's getting drafted. And so I'm very scared at taking him at the ADP he's at because, again, you're now trusting that, okay, he's had 2 healthy and 2 good seasons in the last 7. Yeah, and how many years he's been in the league. And so I'm just really worried that he continues that another year next year. Again, I don't think he's a huge bust as far as the season's concerned. I just don't think he matches last year's numbers. And I think for where he's getting drafted, that it's just too high for me. There's other guys I'd rather wait on at tight end and take a little later and probably look at the upside on them.
Joe, you said it very splendidly, so I have nothing else to say. Travis Etienne is my bust.
I knew you were going to like that one, Steve.
Oh, I do. I like it very much. And with that, that concludes our show breaking down the AFC South division for the upcoming NFL season. Before we sign off, JT, thanks so much for coming back on the show. Where can others find your great work?
Yeah, thanks for having me on, guys. It's been a great time. Always love talking Ainleys, but anytime I can talk about the Colts, I always appreciate that. You can find me on Twitter at JTOrange. I'm on there playing every type of fantasy league, anything and everything. So get on there and ask me questions on that. I write for DLF and am also an IDP ranker. So I write a lot of IDP material for them. Just did a breakdown of every division. Going through the whole defense. So if you're an IDP player, I just broke down the entire NFC South. Every team that we just talked about tonight, I went through their entire defense and who's IDP playable and who's not. So I got those guys on there. You can find my show, The Stew with JT Brew, on the Dynasty Pros Football channel. So I'm on there. And then I always do a Debbie show every other Monday on Dynasty Pros Football. So me and SC Romero and Tommy Harvey do a Debbie show on there. So if you guys are Debbie players, get on there. We are in the midst of breaking down every college division and the Debbie assets in every league right now. So you can find me on all that as well. And again, thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely, JT. We always enjoy having you. And if you enjoyed this video, we are a new channel. So if you want to support us, we would welcome that and really would appreciate if you could subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also follow us on Apple and Spotify podcasts as well. And before you go, put a comment below. What do you think is going to happen in the AFC South? Who do you think will ultimately be the division champion? We want to hear about it. Let us know. We had some different opinions. So I'm sure you could have some different opinions as well. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't yet, we've already done the AFC East and the AFC North. So make sure you check those videos out. And until next time.